Two tomato plants, side by side, same seed, same packet, started the same day in the same soil. And one of them stands near twice as tall as the other, dark green and stout, already setting little tomatoes along the stem, while its twin sits there small and pale and bare. A man looks at that and thinks one of them got lucky, or one of them got sick. But it was no luck and no sickness. The strong one got fed something the weak one never did, and it costs almost nothing. I am Elias. My family came over from the Palatinate in 1838, and we have grown tomatoes in this Lancaster County ground every summer since. And I will tell you plainly, the secret to a strong tomato plant is not a bottle of blue powder from the garden store. It is a thing you can stir up in your own kitchen from what is already in the pantry, and you pour it on the ground, not the plant. A neighbor of mine watched it work, and he laughed and called it my magic elixir. I told him there is no magic in it, only old sense. But I will admit, when you see the two plants side by side, it does look like magic. So today I am going to show you exactly how to make it, how to use it, and most important, why it works. So you are not just trusting me, but understanding it. Let me start with the thing that turns the whole matter around, because once you see it, you garden different forever. You are not feeding the plant, you are feeding the soil, and the soil feeds the plant. This is the whole secret, and almost everyone has it backward. Folks think a fertilizer is food you hand straight to the plant, like setting a plate in front of a child. So they buy a powder that dumps salt and nitrogen right at the roots, and the plant gulps it and shoots up fast and green and weak. My grandfather would have shaken his head at that. He taught me the ground is alive. There is a whole hidden world down there, little living things beyond counting, and they are the ones that actually carry food to the root, that unlock what is already in your dirt and hand it to the plant in a form it can use. A tired, lifeless soil has too few of them, and so the plant starves even in good ground. You do not need to force-feed the plant. You need to wake up the living soil underneath it, and then the soil does the feeding the way the Lord set it up to. So this tonic is not really plant food at all. It is food for the life in the soil. You feed them, they multiply, and they feed your tomato. That is why a few cups of it does what a whole bag of powder cannot. Quick word before I go further. The old methods my family uses, there is more of it than fits in any one video. I gathered the whole of it into a book at eliasyoder.com. The book is the long version. If you want it, it is there. I will not mention it again. Now the recipe. It makes 1 gallon, and you likely have most of it in the house right now. You need 4 things. First, yeast. Plain baking yeast, the kind for bread. A bread starter works, any live yeast works, about a tablespoon. The yeast is the heart of the whole thing, and I will tell you why in a minute. Second, molasses, about 2 tablespoons. If you have no molasses, plain sugar will do, the same amount, though molasses is better because it carries minerals the bare sugar does not. Third, if you have it, a cup of buttermilk. This one is not strictly needful, so do not fret if you have none, but it earns its place, and I will tell you how. And fourth, 1 tablespoon of baking soda, no more. That 1 tablespoon matters, and too much undoes the whole thing. And the water. 1 gallon, and the water matters more than folks think. You want it lukewarm, blood warm, about the warmth of bath water, not hot. Hot water kills the yeast before it starts. And it must be clean water with no chlorine in it, because chlorine is put in town water for the very purpose of killing little living things, and that is exactly the opposite of what we are trying to do here. So this is where I catch the rainwater off the barn roof into a barrel, free and clean, and with nothing in it to harm the life we are trying to grow. The same water the good Lord sends down for nothing, while the world would sell it back to you in a jug. If you have no rain caught, let tap water sit open overnight so the chlorine lifts off, or use spring water for a small batch. Now, here is the step everyone is too impatient for, and impatience is why their batch fails. You wake the yeast up first. Take your warm water, stir in the molasses or sugar until it is dissolved, and then sprinkle the yeast across the top. Do not stir it in. Just lay it on the surface so it can spread and breathe. And then you wait. Give it a couple hours at the least, but the first time you do this, leave it overnight. When you come back, you want to see a foam on top, a tan froth like the head on a glass, and that froth is the yeast come alive and feeding. If you see that foam, your tonic is alive and it will work. If you see nothing, your yeast was dead and you start over, and better to learn that from a bucket than from a dead seedling. That overnight wait is the whole difference between a tonic that works and a jar of plain water. Once it is foaming, stir in your buttermilk if you are using it, and last of all, the 1 tablespoon of baking soda, and your gallon is made. Now let me tell you what each thing is doing, plain, because you ought to understand it and not just follow me blind. The yeast is the main worker. It is a living thing, and when it feeds on that sugar, it multiplies fast, and it stirs the whole soil to life, waking the good bacteria and the helpful fungus already down there and feeding them. It speeds the rotting of old matter in the ground into food, and it unlocks the nutrients already sitting in your soil that the plant could not reach on its own. That is the heart of it. The molasses is the food that keeps that life going, and because it carries iron and potash and a little magnesium and calcium of its own, it feeds longer and richer than plain sugar would. The buttermilk, if you used it, brings calcium, and calcium is the very thing a tomato is always short of. When a tomato goes black and sunken on the bottom, that ugly rot, that is calcium it never got, and the buttermilk helps head it off while it strengthens the cell walls of the fruit. And the baking soda, that 1 spoonful, gently settles the sourness at the soil surface and makes it a less friendly place for the molds and blights that plague a tomato. Every one of the 4 has a job. None is there by accident. Now, how to use it. And here is where folks do real harm if they are careless, so listen close. First, never pour it on dry ground straight at the stem. Water your garden lightly first, plain water, so the soil is damp. Pouring a strong living brew onto bone-dry roots can shock them. Damp the ground first, always. Second, you pour it on the soil around the plant, not on the leaves and not right against the stem. Out a few inches from the stem, in a ring, where the feeding roots are reaching, so the life grows out into the soil and the roots grow toward it. On the leaves, it does no good and can invite trouble. Third, and this is the one a man's pride trips him on, do not overdo it. You will be tempted. You will think if 1 spoon of yeast is good, 3 is better, and you will pour it on heavy, hoping to double the magic. Do not. Too much, and you throw the soil out of balance. The microbes crowd and compete, and you get a plant all leaf and no fruit, big and bushy and giving you nothing to eat. The old measure is the right measure. For a seedling, just a few drops near each one, twice a week. For a young plant in a pot, a 1/4 cup. For a grown plant in the ground, up to a full cup, once or twice a week, no more. You still water normal the rest of the time. This is a tonic, not the drink. Do that, and over the next few weeks, you will see it. Greener leaves first, within a week or so. Then thicker stems and more branching. Then the flowers come, and the flowers are the tomatoes coming. I will not stand here and promise you some exact number that your plant will triple by Tuesday, because every garden and every soil is its own thing, and a man who promises you a miracle by the calendar is selling something. But I will tell you plainly, feed the soil this way, and your plants come on stronger and bear better than the ones you left to fend for themselves. And once you have seen the two side by side, you will not garden the old, hungry way again. And it works the same for your cucumbers, your squash, your peppers, the whole garden, not tomatoes only. Now let me tell you who profits from you not knowing a tablespoon of yeast would do it. Not to rile you, just so you see the shape of the thing, because once you see it, you cannot unsee it. There is no money in yeast and molasses and caught rainwater. None. You already own them. But there is a great deal of money in a bag of blue powder with a picture of a giant tomato on it, sold to you every spring, season after season. And here is the part that ought to make you think. That fast, salty powder feeds the plant directly and bypasses the soil life, and over years it can leave your soil deader than it found it, more lifeless, more dependent, so you must buy more powder next year to make up for it. A tonic that builds your soil richer every season makes you need less help over time. A powder that feeds the plant and starves the ground makes you need more. One of those two is a far better business, and it is not the one that helps your garden. I am not telling you a man schemed this in a back room. No one had to. It is worse than a conspiracy because it is a system nobody had to coordinate. It simply pays better to sell a plant food that leaves the soil hungry than to teach a man to feed the soil for free. So there is the whole of it. Wake live yeast in warm, clean rainwater with molasses. Give it the night to foam. Stir in buttermilk for calcium and 1 spoon of baking soda. Damp the ground first, pour it in a ring around the plant and not on the stem, and hold yourself to the small, honest dose. Feed the soil and let the soil feed the plant, the way the ground was made to work. Now I want to hear from you, and I ask honest because I learn the whole country from these comments. Tell me in the comments below, what are you growing this year, and have you ever fed your soil instead of your plants before? And tell me your county and what your dirt is like, sand or clay or good black loam, because the tonic does the most good in the tiredest soil. I read every one. Next time, I want to show you how we make compost that never stinks, because most folks' compost pile turns to a sour, slimy, reeking mess that draws flies, and the old people made sweet-smelling black earth from the very same scraps with one thing the modern pile is missing. That is where the life in this tonic ought to come from in the end, your own ground, made rich by your own hand. A garden is not a thing you force, it is a thing you feed, low down, where the life is, and then you stand back and let it do what it was made to do. My grandfather never bought a bag of plant food in his life, and his tomatoes were the envy of the township, because he understood that the secret was never in the plant, it was always in the ground beneath it. The garden that feeds a family year after year is the garden whose soil remembers how to live. The people who built this country with their hands knew that, and we are only just starting to remember it.